Welcome back to the IE427 Garage, everybody. Today we are continuing work on the King's Cobra Mark IV project, and we've been making quite a bit of progress on the car. So in the last video, I think I left off, we were still working on some of the parts in the back of the car, in the trunk area, and I think I got the nose aluminum installed. I'm still working on some of the stuff here in the back of the car. I've got the wheels back on the car because I wanted to get it back on the ground before I did final adjustment to the doors, because having it up on jack stands or having it up in the air, even just on the front or just on the back, will throw off the door alignment. So I wanted to make sure that it was on the ground just so that I could get as much clearance for the doors as I could without cutting too much material off. I'm trying to save as much material, fiberglass wise, on all the body panels as I can, because we're not doing the paint on this one. We're sending it back in gel coat. And so the owner's gonna drive this thing around, terrorize the neighborhood for probably a year or so before he decides to take it to paint. So I want to make sure that everything functions properly, meaning the doors are open and closed, the trunk lid opens and closes. Same thing with the hood on the front of the car. So we've made sure that we've gapped everything just the littlest bit so that everything closes and kind of drops into place. Now, one of those areas that we clearanced was back here on the trunk. I think if you guys go back to the previous video, you'll see that there was quite a collection right here of material in this parting line. And these are not seams, these are parting lines where the actual mold that the bodies are basically cast in. So they spray the mold once it's all assembled with a gel coat material or a release agent, and then they lay in the gel coat, and then the fiberglass gets layered on top of that. Well, when I started grinding on this part right here, there's a big old gap right here in the fiberglass material. So these are things that the paint and body person that does this car is gonna address later on. But I wanted to get this ground down so that we didn't have any issues with the actual trunk deck lid closing and being level here. So you can see we're pretty level right here and pretty much all the way around. I mean, there are some issues, but some of this will conform as the car gets up to temperature, out in the sun. The body panels, because they're fiberglass, will move a little bit. And we want to make sure that, you know, we provide enough gap and everything so that none of these panel on body joints squeak, because it's just a hideous, annoying sound. So one of the last things that I had to do here in the front of the rear of the car was make some close-off panels for the cockpit area, because I think I showed you, you can actually see daylight into the cockpit from the wheel well. So that area right here has now been addressed. We've got a closeout panel that goes from the top here all the way down to the bottom, and then there's some bulb seal that seals everything off. So those areas on both sides of the car are now closed up. So when the car owner drives through a puddle or something, that water that's thrown by the tires is going to stay in the fender well. It's not going to be thrown forward into the driver's compartment. I started fitting the doors yesterday, And most of the problems that I had were typical for a Mark IV and even for a Mark III before that. But I've been told that a lot of these issues are addressed with the new body molds that they're doing for the next generation of car. So right here you can see we're awfully tight on our gap here, but the door opens and closes and it doesn't bind on anything. So I'm going to leave that alone. This is one of those issues that has been a notorious issue for quite some time, and that is the door panel right here, even if it's level out here, is much lower here. And so Miller would always build this area up. He would get in here with some HSRF. He would build this up. He would basically cover the seam completely, and before the product hardened completely, he would come in here with a razor blade and he would cut this line and then break it loose. And that would build up this area enough so that he knew where that the two sides would meet. And then he would continue his body work from that point. The passenger side door always fits better, meaning the area here, you can get this pretty close and not have to do a bunch of finagling with the body. And the same thing back here. It's really close. So this door took me about a third the time as the driver's side door took me to get lined up. And keep in mind that neither of these are perfect right now. They're just to the point where they'll pass. They're close enough that I'll be able to get the latches installed, the doors will operate, and they're not going to bind up any. So over here on the driver's side, what we end up doing is we bolt the body to the chassis underneath here, and you can see I've got one lone screw here in the front. And what I use is these screws right here. These are actually sheet metal screws. They're self-drilling sheet metal screws with a rubber washer on them. They're designed for metal buildings. So like the roof panels and stuff that go on the metal buildings, these are the screws we use. And I found that they work really good when they go in because of the washer head and the rubber washer underneath. It helps to spread the load out on the fiberglass so you're less prone to cracking the fiberglass if you snug this up. So that one, that screw I actually put in its location that it came in from factory 5, meaning I didn't re-drill the body, I didn't re-drill the chassis, I just kind of put it in where it was. But what I did do is I slotted the hole. So I slotted it this way from the side of the car towards the center. And I did the same thing with the screw on the back, which is right here. The reason I slot them on this side is because on the front of the door here, it's not an issue getting the body even with the door. You can make up that adjustment in the hinge because the hinge has got a lot of adjustment in it. So you can move the door in or out and up and down on that hinge. The problem lies is in the back. So from factory 5, they screw this in and the body is pushed in too far. Now, it has nothing to do with where they put it. It has to do with the way the body is kind of molded and the fact that it won't line up with the back of the door. So you put your front screw in first, and then what you do before you pull that back screw or put that back screw in, you have to pull the body out. And I've got the body pulled out about 1.25 inches from where it was. And that's the reason we slot the hole, because it allows me to get the screw started in the hole and then pull the body out. And then once I've got it in a position here where you can see it's relatively close, so it's not perfect, but it's probably within 1/16 of an inch, then I go ahead and I tighten up that screw. Now I've probably got a little bit more adjustment that I could pull it out, but you know, at this point, for a car that's going to be finishing gel coat right now, it's close enough. So what I'm working on right now is rebuilding brand new parts. I'm rebuilding the door latches. So I will preface this by saying these are the old style door latches. And I have no experience with the new door latches whatsoever. I have not had a car come through here that has had the new door latches. I have not taken a car to Miller that has had the new door latches. I was supposed to get a door latch from Factory 5, you know, so I could see it, touch it, see how it worked, all that kind of stuff. It never got here. So I've just moved on. I will deal with it when and if I get a newer car that has the new door latches. But for the old door latches, they were prone to having the handle portion, which is right here where my thumb is, become dislodged from the area right down here where it is just swedged on. So ignore the nut and the washers and the carriage bolt that come in from the back side. Those are not anything that come with the door latch itself. Those are the fix that we have applied to these door latches. So what we do is we basically get a 5/16 carriage bolt. I think it's an inch long. And we insert it from the back. I've yet to grind these down. I want to grind these down flatter so they have less interference against the body. But we drive that in from the back, and then we get a larger washer that goes on the outside of that swedged area to sit over it, and then a smaller washer, a 5/16 washer, and a nylon lock nut to go over it, and we sandwich it all together. Now I have lubed these, so they are extremely easy to work. We also remove the secondary spring. So at this hole right here, there is a spring that goes in that hole and then latches to the back of this handle right there. I think you can see the notch in the handle. And those little springs are right here. I save them for the car owner. If he wants to put these back on, he can. We take them off because they just simply make the door latch work easier. So I take these, I put them in the bag that all the hardware for the doors came with, and I'll give them to the car owner. The last thing we do on the actual door latch itself is we pull the handle all the way back, and you can see it's flush right now, but it wasn't flush when I started. I had to actually grind that down with a file so it was flat. If you fail to do that on these older door latches, what can happen is that the pin won't release all the way, and then the door won't open. And the only way you can open the door is to pull the cover off, the chrome cover, and then get in there, and then you have to unscrew the entire latch to get the door open. So we go ahead and we clearance the pin so that when it's fully engaged, it goes all the way down inside there and releases from the actual latch. I'm going to do one more thing for the door latches, and that is I'm going to enlarge the hole in basically the end of the latch. So right here, there's a hole. I'm going to make that hole just a little bit bigger. I'll probably go to the next drilled size, and then I'll chamfer around the outside so that the door latch is prone to close and latch every time. It's actually a two latch system, kind of like any other automobile, where it'll latch in one position and then it will lock in the next position, meaning it'll close all the way. So if you look at these closers, there's an actual latch right here where my finger is. You can see that indent. And that pin on the door latch itself will get caught in here at the first latch, but it will go all the way in that hole on its second. And if you only get it caught on this first little portion, the door will rattle. So that's what I'm working on today. I'm going to try to get both door latches installed in the car, and then I'll bring you guys back. You know, you can look at it. But if you've got the new door latches, this really isn't going to apply to you because you're going to have all new instructions for those door latches, and I believe they're more of a like a bear claw type latch. They latch down with two pins instead of a single pin inside. So, like I said, I don't have any experience with those door latches because I've never seen one in person. So we'll have to wait until I get a car in here that uses the new latches before I can give you an assessment and a how-to on those. But I'm gonna work on those latches. I'll bring you back just as soon as I get those installed in the car, and we'll take a look at them. All right, it's a new day. The door latches are in. I'll show you those first. I'm actually working on the hood for the car right now. So here you go. Latches are all finished up. I ended up using the spacers for each of the door latches that come with the door latch kit for I guess we would call these the vintage door latches. But doors close real nice, and they're a little bit stiff to open right now, but that's just because everything's brand new. The reason I used the backing plate or the spacer was because on the back where we put those carriage bolts, you can do one of two things. You can either use the spacer, which has a hole in it, a recess for that carriage bolt to kind of nest into, or you can like take a hole saw and drill behind the door latch in the fiberglass to relieve some of that material so that that carriage bolt will kind of go into the fiberglass. But like I said, the door latches are in, they work, both sides of the car. I've just got these spaced right now with the washers that Factory 5 supplies with the door latch kit. If this had been a finished car, meaning we painted the car, I would have gone ahead, measured up the thickness of these washers and made a single spacer for this. But it doesn't make sense for me to do that now, because when the body goes on later, those spacers might not work the same as they would work now. So I'll leave that up to the car owner. The spacers honestly aren't hard to cut. I use the bandsaw, so I get a nice clean 90-degree cut, but you can cut that material with a hacksaw or a death wheel and an angle grinder. You just have to be careful to try to get it as close to 90 degrees as possible, and then clean up all the debris from the cut. That's the one advantage of the bandsaw. It makes a nice clean cut, and there isn't much cleanup to do. But so I'll leave that to him. What I'm working on now is getting all the measurements done for the latches for the hood. So conventional wisdom tells you that you need to find center line. You can see I've got a line drawn here with a marker, and that'll come off with acetone, so I'm not worried about that. But the question that I've seen most often on any of the social media pages or on the forums is, how do I find center? Well, here's how I find center. I take a nice long straight edge, and the back portion of this, I can actually curve this if I was using both hands, but the back portion of the hood that's closest to the windshield is actually a straight cut, the majority of it. So what I do is I measure from there, and in this case I measured 5 inches. Measured 5 inches from here back, made a mark. You can actually see my original mark right there. And then I did the same thing over here, made a mark. This one actually got covered up when I put the black line over it, but 5 inches back from here. Then what I did is I went ahead and I clamped the straight edge down, lining up my marks. So I clamped it with one of the quick grip clamps on this side and over on this side. So let me do that again real quick. I'll show you what that looks like, and then I'll show you how I measure and mark for the center line. I've got it clamped down on each side, and I've got it lined up with our line. What I did originally is I just lined it up with my 2 marks, which is a little bit harder to do, especially by yourself. But if you get it close and you clamp one side, then what you can do is come over here, clamp the other side, get it as close as you can, and then just fuss with it a little on each side until you get it right on your mark. Take your black marker and make a line on the hood. You can actually do this without making the line on the hood. I just found it was easier. But then take a square. I'm using a Swanson speed square for this. Line this up on your center mark, and what we measured 38.5 inches from here to here. Divided that in half, that's 19.25. Made a mark right here, which is what I'm lined up with, at 19.25, and then I transferred that line to the edge of the hood. Now, you can measure 12 inches from that center line and then mark the hood where you want to drill for your holes for your handles that are gonna block the hood. I like to drill them an inch or so out from there. I like to go with 13. It puts the latches still on that straight portion of the back of the hood, but it puts them a little bit towards the corner, closer to the corner, and it allows the edges, especially if there's any inconsistencies in the shape of the hood, for you to kind of lock those down and pull the corner of the hood down so it lines up with the body. And so that's what I did. I came here for my center line. I measured 13 inches over, and I measured 13 inches over that way. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring my line straight back. So I'm gonna use the square on my straight edge, make it line up with my mark here, and then I'm gonna make another mark, or a new mark, at 2 1/4 inches back from the edge of the hood. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna line the center of those handles where the pin, where the shaft goes through the fiberglass, is gonna be in the center of the rib that's on the bottom. And that's gonna give you enough throw on the handles that the duckbill that goes underneath, that locks it in, still goes under the body and allows it to lock, but it's far enough back that it doesn't put it in an awkward position where I don't know how to explain it, like it wants to work itself loose over time. It just gives it like the most amount of leverage. So that's what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna measure for those, I'm gonna mark my holes, and then I'm gonna drill my holes. You can better see where I've got those marked now. So I did the same thing with the straight edge and the speed square. So I pushed the speed square against the straight edge so I'd have a nice 90-degree line from our measurement, and then scribed a line with the marker across there, and then measured 2 1/4 inches back, and that gave me the center point for the drill mark for each of my latches. So I've got the same thing over here. So now we're ready to drill. I'm going to get the appropriate hole saw ready, and then we'll get those drilled. The two handles are mounted. This will get put on the car just as it is. I'm not going to pull the handles back off now that I pre-fit them. They're not going to get in my way. I did not put the duck feet or the duck bills or whatever these are called on the bottom yet. Those will get put on along with the brackets and the screws after I get the hood mounted. But I found this little gem as I was messing around with the hood. You got nice straight line down the driver's side of the hood, and then boom, bumps out, and then it's straight again. So I didn't see that when the car got dropped off. I probably would have addressed this sooner. But these are the things that you know, you're gonna have to deal with if you want to drive it in gel coat. I obviously don't want the owner to have to look at that, you know, for the next year or two, however long it's gonna be while he's driving this thing in gel coat. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll probably grab the belt sander with some probably 60 grit on it, and try to even it out and make the whole, you know, this whole side of it straight, or even it out. I don't want to take off any more than I have to, but I mean, that's a little bit unsightly, even for a gel coated car, to have, you know, that's like a 1/4 of an inch bump out right there, or a 1/4 of an inch dip. And wow. We'll fix it. So I think that's going to do it for tonight. It's just about dinner time, so I'm going to go inside, grab a bite. Tomorrow we'll go ahead, we'll fit the hood, and then I've got a template here that I use to make the louver cutouts the right size. So I've already traced those lines on here. You can see I've got black line all around it. I talked to Miller yesterday and asked him about these. He kind of just confirmed everything I already knew about them, which was it's less about getting them perfect than making them look right. So you want them to look right on the side of the car. So when I show you this one, it looks absolutely hideous, but it's because the existing cutout is not square. And the traced lines that you see around here are. So when you stand back and you look at it, it looks like it's off, but you know, I made it look right with the template in place, and so that's what we're gonna go with. And I'm undersizing these, so I'm gonna, rather than cutting all the way to the line, I'm gonna cut it just inside the line, and then whoever does paint and body on the car will have a little bit of material to work with that if they need to adjust them. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna glue those louvers in when we send it back to the car owner, and so those will come out when they do body and paint. But I want the car to be as finished as possible so that when he drives it, you know, he can have some pride and ownership. You know, we want it to look and act like a Cobra and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna do everything we can to complete the car as far as we can so that he can have a nice experience with it. So I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. I wasn't gonna pick up the camera today. It's Saturday. I actually had a customer stop by to pick up some parts. He lives locally, and so he wanted to come by and pick up his parts rather than have me ship them. So I got a late start today. I mean, I think I was out in the shop. I was out in the shop with the customer about noon, but I didn't really start working on the King's Cobra until about 2 o'clock. And I had already put the hood on last night. Mrs. IE427 is feeling under the weather this week, and so it's not a big deal. Since this car's not painted, I wasn't too worried about scratching the hood, so I did it myself. I mean, I have a method of putting the hood on without having help. And I got it on last night, but I didn't adjust it. I figured, you know, I got it on, I'll deal with it tomorrow, because I figured I'd have the whole afternoon to fart around with the hood. But as you can see, the hood's not on the car anymore. And this is completely my fault. I just made a post on social media, and you know, I titled it, I should have checked, and I should have. I should never take for granted, and I normally don't ever take for granted that just because something was on the car when an owner drops the car off for us to finish it, that it's necessarily, how do I put this delicately, proper. You know, I don't know the circumstances in which the hood was placed on the car when it was brought down here. I don't know if it was, you know, a last minute thing and possibly, you know, kind of just put on the car so that it could be shipped down here or brought down here or what. But as I started to adjust the hood, everything just kept getting worse and worse. So I put the hood into these hood brackets the way basically the bushings were run through the hinges on the car, and I'll show you those in a second. But as you look at these brackets, the brackets need to be parallel with one another. And if I put the square up here, and keep in mind, it doesn't matter, the hood's not moving on the flat surface, it's set in its position right now. And you can see that putting a square there 90 degrees, there's a gap at the top. If I move the square over to the other hinge, the gap is even worse over here. So you can see there's a gap. So those hinges are turned in towards one another, you know, at the top right now. And I didn't notice that when I put that on the car. But as I started to adjust the hood to make it not bind, normally you would adjust that by moving the hardware here. The hardware here, where these two overlap, you'd move them out, in or out. So in this case, I was trying to move this one in towards the center of the car because it kept rubbing right here. But as I did that, it pushed the other side so far over that I had no room for adjustment over there. I ran out of adjustment on the hinge. And that's when I noticed that the hinges themselves were at that angle as well. They were kind of like this, and they're not supposed to be like that. The hinges are supposed to be parallel with one another so that the hood, as it closes, doesn't bind. And I missed it. So the first thing that I noticed was that the bushings were on the wrong side, and so I fixed those. Basically, I pulled one hinge arm off at a time, which you can do. And I pressed the bushings out and put them on the other side where they needed to go. But when I did that, I found that there simply wasn't enough room. On this side, it's not bad. There was enough room for the hinge arm because the hinge arm is supposed to go to the outside. There was enough room in here to get the hinge arm in, get a washer on it, and get a nut on it. But on this side, it ran so close here that I couldn't get anything in here. I couldn't even get a washer on here. So the hood's back off the car. And I'm going to drill out the pop rivets on those brackets. I'm gonna put them in where they're parallel with one another and farther into the center a little bit so that I have enough room for the hinge arms. And then I'm gonna get back on this tomorrow because it's near the end of the day. It's coming up on 6 o'clock. It's almost time for dinner. And I've just run out of patience for the day. So what I'm trying to tell all of you is that you're gonna run into these days where maybe you don't read the instructions and it throws your whole day into the toilet basically, and you're gonna have to stop and regroup and start on it again the next day. So don't let these setbacks deter you from working on your vehicle. I see far too many people give up on projects because of frustrating days like this, and you can't. You have to look at all the good things that this hobby brings you. The satisfaction of putting something together, looking back and saying, I built that. So don't let these days frustrate you to the point where you lose interest in your project altogether. I posted a video day before yesterday onto YouTube and Rumble, and I got a comment on there. And it was about side louvers and stuff like that and driving in gel coat. And the guy who commented has his own YouTube channel. I think it's JR Motorsports. And I usually don't advertise other people's YouTube channels on mine. But JR is a really nice guy. And he made a comment about, the louvers and how, driving in gel coat, everybody's going to ask you stuff like, when are you going to get it painted? I am of the opinion that I would rather enjoy my car and drive it than worry about when it's going to be painted or whether or not it has side louvers on it. Now, I've said previously, I want this owner to be able to enjoy this car and enjoy it for everything it represents, it being a replica of a Cobra. So I want to include the side louvers for him so he doesn't have to deal with those questions. He'll still have to deal with the when are you going to get it painted thing, but I don't think he's going to wait 12 years to paint his like I did for mine. So hopefully that's not an issue. I didn't want to go on a whole rant about these cars and how some of the builds languish, but I do see this more often than not that guys get frustrated and then they just push the project to the side and they never get back to it. And I would like to see every one of these cars on the road and driving rather than sitting in someone's garage unfinished. So I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, it's the next day, guys. I think I'm gonna leave this video here. I got the hood on, and it's fitting pretty well. I'm gonna move on to the latches for the hood next, but I needed a break from the hood today. So I started working on the side louvers and getting those all cut out. You guys will see that and probably the hood latches in the next video, but I think I'm gonna leave it here. If you're enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.